Fractions to decimals with number chips. This is a Thanksgiving version. So it starts with getting students ready to convert fractions to equivalent fractions with 100 in the denominator. So that's the first part of converting from fractions to decimals. So this slide, the first slide students are going to be interacting with, just ask the students what they multiply times each of these numbers in order to get 100. So it's very simple. Students can get practice moving the chips. And then to move them into place, they just click and hold on the edge, and then they can move them where they like. So 50 times 2, 25 times 4, 20 times 5, 10 times 10, and 5 times 20. Just a reminder to the students what they multiply times each of these numbers in order to get 100. The next slide, they're going to be converting fractions to equivalent fractions with 100 in the denominator. Now, all the numbers they need are on every slide. So that way, if they get to the end and the numbers aren't quite working, they know they've made an error somewhere and they need to go back and look again. So for this first one, 9/50ths, they know that they have to multiply 50 times 2 to get 100. So that means they have to also multiply 9 times 2, and they get an equivalent fraction of 1800ths. The next one, they know they have to multiply 5 times 4. That means they also have to multiply 25 times 4, and then 5 times 4 gives them 20 hundredths, and so on. Now, the next slide is a review of place value. So students are going to be asked to putting each one of these numbers in the correct place according to place value. Place your 4 in the ones place. Place your 1 in the tenths place. Place your 8 in the hundreds place, and so on. So they have all the numbers they need to do that. Now, slide 5, they're going to be looking at fractions that already have 100 in the denominator, and they're shown how to change these to a decimal. So in the numerator, the number on the far right, if they have 100 in the denominator, that number in the far right in their numerator will go in the hundreds place. So the arrows are showing them where these numbers go. So the first one, 9, will have to go in the hundreds place, which means this first number is going to be a 0. The second one, the 3, has to go in the hundreds place. And again, the first number would have to be a 0. And then for the next one, when they've got a fraction greater than 1, again, same rule. The 0 is going to be in the hundreds place. And then the other two numbers, they just put them in the correct order. So they can see that if it's a fraction greater than 1, it will be greater than 1 as the decimal also. So the next two slides, students are just going to be converting these fractions to decimals. On slide 7, they've got one where they have 5 100ths. Students tend to put that 5 in the tenths place. They need to know that it goes in the hundreds place. So for 5 hundredths, it would look like this. And then they've got a couple fractions that are greater than 1, so they just have to put those numbers in the correct place. Now, when they get to slide 9, now they have to convert these fractions to equivalent fractions with 100 in the denominator. So for the first one, they know they have to multiply times 50. That would give them 50 hundredths. And then they can go ahead and change it to a decimal. 3/4, they have to multiply times 25. That will give them 75 hundredths. And then they can go ahead and change that to a decimal. They're going to be doing the same thing on the next two slides. Now, when they get to slide 12, well, they can't always directly convert to a fraction with 100 in the denominator. In this case, they have to simplify both of these fractions first. So if they simplify 6/40ths, divide by 2, that will give them 3 20ths. Now they can change it to a fraction with 100 in the denominator by multiplying by 5, and then they can change it to a decimal. Same thing on the next one. If they divide by 3, they get 1/5. Then they can change it to 20 hundredths and change it to a decimal. Okay, now the next one, sometimes they can't change it to a fraction with 100 in the denominator. So in that case, and they're going to simplify first, they'll find out that when they simplify it, it's 1/8. But they can't multiply 8 times any number and get 100. So they have to use long division. So here's a long division problem. And they just have to solve it using the number chips. Again, they have every number that they need. So 1 divided by 8. The rest of the numbers they need to know will be zeros. 8 goes into 10 one time. 8 times 1 is 8. Subtract, they get 2. Bring down a 0. 8 goes into 20 two times. 8 times 2 is 16. Subtract, they get 4. Bring down a 0. Now 8 will go into 40 evenly 5 times. And so now they have their decimal answer. They're going to do the same thing on the next slide. And then the very last slide, or the last slide using number chips, they're going to get a repeating decimal as an answer. So all of these numbers are going to be 6s. And they can see it's just going to continue on forever. And they're just going to use this little bar here to show that 6 is repeating. The final slide has some decimals vocabulary. You may want to go over with the students 3 different types of decimals: terminating, non-terminating, and repeating. Okay, so that is fractions to decimals with number chips. This is the Thanksgiving version.